My paranormal experiences all happened in Pennsylvania. A short overview of my encounters. We're going to start with the Jersey Devil. I was putting on new fog lights on my 1975 GMC pickup truck. Took me all day to do it. The bumpers of those trucks are tough. I finally finished up, and my buddy Billy pulled up, and I said, I'm going to go out and test my lights. He said, I'll come with you and stuff like that. So we went and got a case of beer, Beck's beer. We drove up River Road, Route 32, Delaware River, heading north. Hadn't drank a beer, but we got to General Towles Road. I think the name has changed since then. It just was getting dark, and we planned on pulling into fields and turning on the spotlights and seeing if we could spot deer. As soon as we turned on the General Towles Road, I was probably in second gear, going about 5 miles an hour, 4 or 5 miles an hour, walking speed. And to our right, off of that road, is uphill. And at the top of that hill is Bowman's Tower at Bowman's Hill, where Washington crossed the Delaware. I was only a couple of 100 feet up the road, and only, like I said, doing 4 or 5 miles an hour. And this thing leaped from the right side of the road, which was the high side of the road, the tower side, and landed on the road right in front of us, but 20, 30 feet, no more than that. My fog lamps were on. We had just turned them on for the first time. This thing looked right at us. It was 3 feet at the shoulder. It looked like a squirrel monkey. It had the same color hair, you could say, as a deer or a mountain lion or anything of that sort with that tannish fur. And, of course, my fog lamps were amber, too. So it put a little color into it. It had giant owl wings, same color as its fur. It had no hair on its hands, on its front hands, and they were black-skinned, and no hair on its rear feet, and they were black-skinned. Had a black tip on its tail, black tip on its ears, and it had no fur on its face, and its face was all shiny wet like it was sweating. It held its wings upright, kind of like a Canadian goose when it comes in for a landing on the water surface. It cups its wings, and then it tilts left to right and releases air, and then captures air again and slows down its speed. It held its wings like that, like in a cup form on either side, and held them upright. And it only took about 4 steps, and it was across the road. This was not a road with left and right side. This was basically a country road with a black top. It walked right across the road, and it leaped off the other side. And because of my fog lamps being so powerful, we were able to watch this thing glide all the way down the downhill side of the mountain. Now there's an apartment complex there or something, but we watched it glide all the way down the mountain. We were kind of freaked. I drove down the road. We didn't say anything to each other, got to the stop sign, and we asked each other, what did you see? And what did you see? And it got to the point where he didn't want to say what he saw. And I told him what I saw, and he didn't want to say. And it was come to the point where we're punching each other in the arm. Tell me what you saw. Tell me what you saw. To this day, he doesn't want to talk about it, even though he did sign. I was mountain biking one day, and I met him at a bar, and I was getting a 6-pack for the mountain ride, and he signed a coaster, and the story is true. He signed his name and all that kind of stuff. To me, it was flying monkey with a big set of owl wings with a huge prehensile tail. black eyes, black skin face, little teeny ears. It was just awesome. It was just awesome. And, it leads to a life of ridicule and judgment. But that's what happened. I drew a picture of it that night. Now that picture is in print, Flying Humanoids by Ken Gerhardt. And you'll see my drawing in there. And the story, he didn't get the story completely right. He should have recorded it. But all in all, it is as it is. Saw what I think is the Jersey Devil. I think most of the story's been blown out of proportion, but this is what I believe the Jersey Devil is. And I thought I saw it a second time, a creature flying across the river from the Jersey side to the PA side, bouncing across the rocks. And then when it got to the PA side, it changed its direction of flight, and it flew with the trees over the water and landed somewhere in the trees, and you couldn't see it or anything like that. But it just wasn't flying like your average cormorant or seagull, or why would an owl be out in broad daylight hopping the rocks on the Delaware River? It just wasn't right. And the only thing it fit, and it came right to mind seeing it, was this was the same thing. And it's doing the same thing again. And this is what we used to do. Cross the Delaware River, hop in the rocks. And every now and then you'd have to jump in. But I think it was doing the exact same thing. If you look at the wings, and the reason, I don't know why it held its wings up, but if you look at it, I'm sure it could close its wings. But maybe it wasn't a flapper. Maybe it's a glider. And maybe it could fold its wings down, but it just has enough to get itself off the ground and glide and not really flap and gain altitude. Maybe it's something like that. And that's why it was hopping rocks. That's why when it jumped off the side of the road, it never flapped its wings, because it's a glider. And maybe it climbs trees and goes from tree to tree and rarely is on the ground. That's the way I look at it. It's what I saw. And the second time, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it was. I could identify any bird in the local area. No problem. Let's see what we got. UFO. Westfield UFO, where I'm at today. What we got here? Westfield, PA. Oh, the red and blue, two UFOs, each one on one mountainside. The red one was on the northern mountainside and only about halfway up and very close to the treetops. And then the blue one was on our southwestern mountainside, a different mountain on the other side of the valley. And you're only talking a mile's distance. That's about it. The width of the valley, maybe 2 miles tops. Here was a blue one sitting on the side of that mountain about halfway up. And our electric had gone out. And my buddy came over and he goes, "You want to go outside and smoke a cigarette and just sit outside and enjoy the outside?" And yeah, why not? Went outside and didn't bring my camcorder, and usually I live with it. Sat down at the back bench, power was out, and there were these two UFOs lit up like neon lights. I mean, it was incredible. The perfect discoidal shape with the dome on the top, but all blue, and the other one all red, and looking just like a neon light. I said, I'm not going upstairs to get my camcorder. I've seen so many. I'm not even going to bother. The next day, I was sitting outside having a cup of coffee, and this lady pulled up. I knew her mother. I asked her if she liked the power outage the night before. And she goes, "Oh, yeah, we get that all the time." I said, "Did you see the UFOs?" And she goes, "What?" I said, "Did you see the UFOs?" She goes, "No." I said, yeah, there's one sitting right there and one sitting right over there. And I said, me and Greg watched them. She goes, it's funny you should say that because my son kept saying, they're here, Mommy, they're here. So that was a pretty cool event. The fact that the power went out, I've heard that many a time on a UFO event. And here's another one right here, sitting outside at the pavilion, broad daylight, several other people sitting outside having a good time in summer day. I'm looking outside the pavilion, facing outside the pavilion, not like everybody else. They're underneath the canopy. I'm like on the edge looking out and looking at nature and the sky and everything like that. I watched what I think was a DC-7 or a DC-10, white with the red stripe, that to me matched the ones that you see at that secret Air Force base, 51, and it carries the people there, the employees. It was just like that. Right over top of the cabin of the jet was a bronze-colored, donut-shaped UFO with a red ring on the outside, a red ring on the inside, and windows all the way around. And it wasn't as big. If you cut the nose off that jet, cut the body right in half, and you turn that UFO on its side, it would fit right inside that jet, smaller than the circumference of the body of that jet, smaller than the girth of that jet. It was no more than, I'll guarantee, 50 feet off of the cabin, right above the cabin, directly above the cabin. And I hollered out, UFO, UFO. And one guy got up and he looked at it. He goes, I saw it just as it went into the clouds. And it went into the clouds and you couldn't see the jet or the UFO anymore. What else we got? Robin. Oh, my sister, her encounters with UFOs. I mean, and that's right here. It's in the same county as me. The UFOs in her backyard, lighting up the house, just crazy stuff. Really crazy stuff. Oh, this was as soon as I moved here. It was like September 19th, 2010. I walked outside and I knew immediately that something was here, or I knew that they were here. And it was like a moment in my mind where I was either so blank that I was receiving something, or my intuition was so strong that there was like a connection made as soon as I stepped out the door. I don't know what it was, but I walked out there to the picnic table and I sat at that picnic table. I looked up at that mountain and I said inside my mind, I know you're here. And almost instantly they lit up. The same mountain that the little red UFO was sitting over. This white UFO, just like a white ball of light, it lit up the same side of the mountain, same level, probably about 1,500 feet. These mountains here are on the average 2,000 or so. And here this thing lowered down, and you could see it going behind the trees. You could see it passing behind the trees, going to the forest floor. I would cast out my thought, and I thank them for letting me see it and see them. I told them, I said, this is planet Earth, and 3 times is a charm. And so you got to show yourself 3 times in order to believe it. And that's what I said in my mind to them. I said, I'll be back out tomorrow night, 9:00, same time. And we'll do that for 3 nights. And they were there every night on time. I mean, the 4th night, I brought my camcorder. There were several other people sitting outside. And I told them all to look. And there it was. And you're pointing with your finger. Everybody's looking, but none of them is looking where you're pointing. And I tried to film it, but so far, not a single camcorder I could buy films at night what I want to see. It's just one of those things. I just can't get a camcorder that films nighttime. Not even a star in the sky. We had the boat, what looked like a hull of a boat. If you were a diver and you were underwater, you would be looking up at a V-hull boat. Put little stubby wings on the back end just before the transom. And it had 3 square windows in the belly of this boat. And it sounded like a snowmobile going through the sky. Lots of people saw it. People in town saw it. People everywhere saw it. And it was just above the trees. And it sounded like a snowmobile. And you look up at it, and it's got these 3 square windows in the belly. And then there's static electricity sparking around inside the belly of this thing in the windows. And it was just crazy. It was just crazy. My friend saw it. I saw it. And the next day, we're sitting outside, and my friend comes over, and he goes, "Here, I drew this for you." And I said, "Yeah, I saw it." But I kept his drawing anyways. It was awesome. Everybody was amazed about it. And, of course, the usual, it's military and stuff like that. And, why would the military be flying around a top secret project in a town like this? It just doesn't make sense. I've seen other things go on that are military, and they're nothing like that. In Morrisville, Pennsylvania, we had, when I broke my back, when I could make it downstairs and I could sit outside and have a beer and suffer in my pain and enjoy it, that's what I did. And with 9 herniated discs, you don't move much. I would sit out there from sun up and beyond sundown, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and just sit there and watch nature and watch the sky, watch everything. Discovered that we had flying squirrels in the backyard. I saw a baby the size of a bumblebee. It was amazing. And I had just come back from Florida, and I had really sharpened my lizard spotting skills. And I could spot a lizard a mile away up in a palm tree. And I'll tell you what, I spotted that flying squirrel, that little baby. And even the flying squirrel topic, had to put a sign out front with photos from John James Audubon and Scientific Magazine, all kinds of stuff, and put it on a sign out front that we have Native American flying squirrels, Pennsylvania natives. Nobody would believe me. Nobody would believe me. But sitting out there, not only discovering the flying squirrels, it was discovering these balls. When has anybody ever bought a balloon that's battleship gray? Can you go to a balloon store and buy a battleship gray balloon? I mean, that's just, I don't think there is such a thing. I really don't. I really don't. Even in weather balloons, I don't think there's a battleship gray. It's just bizarre. But I would sit in the backyard, and it's fully forested, giant oaks, big euonymus, just Pennsylvania wild, full of nature. And these things were flying at one day and another one about a week later. And they both came from the same directions, but on either side of the same house, which backed up our house. But it wasn't coming from that house. They were coming from far away, drifting between the houses. Not really. Well, they looked like they were drifting, but they were flying and they were vibrating. And that was just beyond bizarre. And in my studies, I have found that you can find NASA videos of this gray ball that pulls up alongside of the shuttle or something, and they videotape it. And it's supposed to be a real NASA true video. And here's this ball. And that's what we saw in the backyard. It was this battleship gray ball that vibrated. No matter how you looked at it, it was out of focus. It was just awesome. And it was flying 9 feet off the ground. And then it would just go right up and over the roof and over the other side and between more houses. It was bizarre. But there was 2 of them that came by and watched them make their full flights until they disappeared. What are they? No clue. A probe, I would imagine. Maybe counting life forms or whatever they were doing. I have no idea. I mean, starting out when I was a little kid. Let's see, we can go to Jump Hill Road in Levittown. No, this would be 28 Little Lane, crop circles. Levittown Lake. I would walk the length of the lake, cross the dump, go over Route 13, both directions, major high-speed traffic. And as a little kid, I did this. And I would go into the canal, the Delaware Canal, and meet up with the forest and the canal on either side and all the quarries and all the fishing and stuff like that. Here was this big field. This is when I was first exploring the canal and learning it. I had stepped to the left side of the canal instead of the right side. The right side was a path. The left side, you could find buildings and stuff as you walked distance. It was there was only like 40 feet designated on either side of the canal as the Delaware Canal protected zone. And I stepped into the left side, not knowing really where I was going. And out in this field were 3 perfect crop circles spun in one direction in a triangle pattern, just like you'd see the 3 lights of a UFO in the sky. Each one 75 feet across, at least that. But we were amazed. We jumped around in them and looking at it. And you're a kid. You don't know what these things are. You have no idea. And it's just cool looking. Look at them all spun, you know. That was really cool. We had no clue. And then it was another time going down the canal with a friend of mine. I knew the canal well at this point, and it was the same area, but I chose the right side of the canal, which you can take the path. And I walked down the path, and it's just beyond the field where the crop circles were. On the left side, there's this like a belly in the canal, a jetty. The canal doesn't have any current. If it had current, that's where you would find a whirlpool and an eddy. Here, there was a circle in the ice. It was wintertime. The canal was frozen solid, and we had fresh foot of snow laid down. And we were walking virgin snow, and we got to that point where the canal widened for this belly in the canal, this jetty or eddy. There was a perfect circle, 10 foot across. You could see the 6 inches of ice on top of the canal. You could see the 12 inches of snow on top of that. Perfect ice circle, no footprints out there, no nothing. Nobody ice skating, none of that going on. None of that went on in this area. The water in the canal was flip-flopping 6 inches. It was just stunning to look at. And we just stood there and what is it? Why is the water moving? And we couldn't figure it out. And it took years. I'll guarantee that was probably, 60, I don't know what year that would be, 75, maybe 80. And UFO stuff or information was just coming out on TV. It took quite a few years before, and I lived UFOs on TV. I mean, everything I watched, if it wasn't a UFO show on, I wasn't happy. I learned many years later about ice circles, had never heard of them, never knew anything about them. That's what we saw, was an ice circle. And let's see what else I have here. The scoop mark. on my leg. This was Little Lane, Levittown at Walt Disney Elementary School field. I was to be playing football with some friends, and I was first. So I was sitting in the grass waiting for him. I looked down on my leg, and on my leg is this perfect scoop mark where my calf is, close to the front shin bone. It's a perfect scoop mark. I never had an operation, nothing like that. I never had any injuries that would cause that, nothing like that. I looked right at it, and I took my hand and I brushed my hand over it and never thought a word of it until probably 15 years ago or so. It was like totally wiped out of my mind, totally wiped out of my mind. And then I remembered back that I laid down my motorcycle and I burnt my leg on the muffler exactly where the scoop mark was. So there's no scoop mark showing anymore. But it was only later that I learned that people would discover scoop marks and they would just wave their hand over it and forget it. And it would take 30 years before that they would remember it again. That's exactly what happened to me. I mean, it's just nuts. It's crazy. It really is. It's crazy. We got a UFO in Morrisville when I was sitting out back with my bad back. This was in the middle of the night, and a white ball of light fell out of the sky, and we got these massive pin oaks in the backyard, and it's fall, and there's not many leaves left on the trees, and you watch this thing fall out of the sky, lighting up between the gaps of the trees. It stops, dead stops between the two lower main limbs, which are probably about 8 or 10 inches thick, just comes to a dead standstill. And I just stare at it and like, okay. And then it makes a right-hand turn from a dead standstill, and it just flies away. It just flies away. I mean, the multicolored ball of light in the backyard, you would have to look, I guess it would be west. The backyard lined up just right with all the hills, the roads, the trees, all the Morrisville trees. It was like a gap. And you could look straight up this gap. You could look all the way to Route 1, all the way to Fairless Hills. It was this gap just created naturally by building homes and all, that you could look this distance, and there was always this thing that was this ball, and it would change every color of light you could ever imagine, and it would just stay there. It would just stay there. It was crazy, but it's not so crazy because where I live now, I've already taken pictures of it, got video of it. It was an older camera, like a 720, 980 or whatever, JVC. And I filmed it out my one window. And it's at the top of the mountain. And this thing comes up, and I've seen it repeatedly. And I took, I don't know, 6 or 7 videos of it. It's like 6 balls or 6 rings that turn and rotate inside of each other. And each ring is changing different colors: ultraviolet, blue, green, yellow, red, orange, amber. And this thing sits there and it spins and it spins and it spins. I mean, it is just, it gets bigger, it gets brighter. What is it? I haven't a clue. You could not convince me of that being a planet, a star, or anything like that. Not in any shape, way, or form could you convince me of that being a planet. It is a UFO, in my opinion. They're here all the time. There's constant UFOs. Going back into my youth, it was repeating nightmare. Believe it or not, sounds bizarre, but it might fit the topic. I mean, I don't usually tell many people about this, but I'm going to tell people. I would have this nightmare of me being pinned in a corner and wearing a hospital, I think called a nurney, giant burnt hamburgers in buns, like they were burned to a cinder on a grill. And here they're sitting in aluminum foil and a hamburger and a bun in each one. And these giant hamburgers would pin me in this corner and I'd be screaming and crying. And this went on for years in my youth. And I just don't know what was going on with that. I really just don't know. But the UFO in Morrisville ended up, like I said, on my street. It flew down Route 13. It was this house that I had these nightmares, and these UFOs turned on New Falls Road and into Jump Hill, and then right up Jump Hill Road. And I was at the top of the hill. It was like my window was directly open to the sky. So I don't know if there's a connection between the dreams, the astral traveling that I had when I was a kid. Don't know if there's a connection, but I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. It's just been UFOs all my life. Like I said, I got 11 more pages that I haven't even looked into. All this is just off the top of my head. Then I've had ghost experiences, stuff like that. But for the most part, it's been UFOs, strange creatures. Morrisville, that thing that climbed a tree, and it leaped from the tree to the back wooden fence, and it was in flight. Was it the Jersey Devil? In my opinion, this thing made this noise. I'm on the second floor. There's trees between the two houses. And it climbs this tree. You could hear its hands, its fingers gripping onto this tree. And it makes this tongue noise. You could hear its tongue in its mouth. I just knew something was strange was going on. I immediately got out of bed, went to lift the Venetian blind, and you heard it leap. And it went and it landed on the back wooden fence. And it's like, nothing could do that. You have to hit the ground first. You can't just leap from this tree and go 150 feet away to the back wooden fence. You can't do that. That really made me think that that was another Jersey Devil encounter. And this thing was, once again, if you look at it, it was leaping and gliding. So you put it all together. And to me, this is what we got. I think we got a tree creature that climbs trees and lays its wings down, and it hides behind a tree trunk, and people walk right on by, never see it, never know it's even there. It could live its life at the treetops. It could live its life away from humans so easily. To me, what can I say? Hybrids. What a topic. What an amazing topic, hybrids. I think everybody should look into the topic of hybrids. What other stuff do I have? I think I'm pretty much done. I think I've covered pretty much everything that I remembered in this past week. This is just off the top of the head. Things that stood out. Didn't mention the astral traveling, but I grew up astral traveling, connecting with a bush under my window and sitting on it, leaving my body, going out the window, sitting on this bush, collecting energy, flying through the sky, being able to go to New Jersey when I didn't know where New Jersey was. I was probably a 6-year-old kid. And then coming back, like either losing faith or losing power. And I would have to come back and sit on the bush and gain energy. And then I would go back and enter my body again. So I don't know if this UFO stuff along with the nightmare and the giant hamburgers, the astral travel. I don't know if it's all connected to UFOs going up my street. Don't know if it's all connected, but I'll tell you what, you know, it's like the Jersey Devil. You put it all together and you got a creature that's gliding. Well, the UFOs, you put it all together and you got, I guess, I don't know, alien abduction. I can't say. I don't remember anything like that. But it's constant UFOs all the time. All the time. I mean, you could sit outside and watch a white ball of light fly across. Not that it has anything to do with you or me, but it's been a life full of UFOs.
If you've had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on the show, please contact us by going to myparax.com. That's myparaex.com. Thanks for listening.